Hello, friend. Season 4 of the Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from a high desert encampment on the frontier of our agrarian hoplite republic. This is a variety program for happy warriors who are getting some seriously bad vibes from the deranged post-Christian technocracy. Grab a tankard of yak's milk and join us by the campfire as Sumo and Cavi return to shake your surveillance, expel your parasites, and generally have a good time. Are you ready? Stand by.
Mystical American Patriot Society. Now available in 3 dimensions.
Hello, this is your captain speaking. We would like to welcome you all aboard SOUL Airlines for this red-eye interstellar flight to the third heaven. Should be smooth sailing, clear skies between here and Argotha, though we may experience some turbulence over the Tropic of Capricorn. So, if that fasten seatbelt sign comes on, do try and remain in your seats. Cavi will be down the aisle shortly with some refreshments, and you'll notice we have a whole host of in-flight entertainment options if you want to check out the guide on the back of the menu in your seat pocket. We'll be underway in just a minute here. So, sit back, relax. It's time to push some service down the aisle and some scenery past the window. I'm not a magic lady, but I want to sing to help the light descend on earth today, 'cause it's gonna get dark tonight. Sing for life, sing for a living life. I still feel weak, but God, I wanna give you shine a living light. I still feel weak, but God, I wanna give you shine a living light. Been walking down the street all night and I've been feeling kinda cold. I still feel naked. God, I wanna get warm before I get old. Oh, I'm so cold. You ever heard this song, Kevin?
No. Not at all.
I knew the answer would be no. I've been celebrating way too long and I've been drinking, I'm ashamed to tell. I still feel thirsty. God, I want to drink the water from the well, from the well. Not ringing any bells, huh?
Not at all.
I think the pilot lied to you guys. There is only one in-flight entertainment show. It's this one. All the channels are this show over and over again. I'm sorry to say. If you're wanting something different, you can look at a different show on mapsoc.org, but they're all...
Or fly on a different airplane.
Or fly on a different airplane. This is the only in-flight entertainment. Is this one? This is Living Bell by Melanie. You don't remember Melanie? I'm not a magic lady, but I want to sing to help the light. And then you would go, light, descend it on the earth today, cause it's gonna get dark tonight. Sing for light. There you go. Sing for living life. Still feel weak, but God, I want to see you shine to live a life. That's Melanie. You don't remember Melanie? Melanie, she was one of the hippie singer-songwriters. Back when people just they wrote whatever and it was a song. I guess people still do that. I haven't listened to pop music in a while, but it's not very good if I remember correctly. Have you listened to any pop songs?
No.
I think
I've always been like a hipster. Yeah, they probably are.
Yeah, I mean, for real, I think they probably just like plug in, give me some lyrics to the AI and.
Well, it was almost already that with like auto-tune and everything anyways.
That's true. You don't remember that, but how about this one? I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. That one? You remember that one?
No.
Yeah. I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I think that maybe we should get them and try them out to see. I've been looking around a while. You got something for me. Oh, I got a brand. She gets real high. Anyway, Melanie. That was back when you could write a song called "I Got a Brand New Pair of Roller Skates." You got
what year was that?
Probably 63. I have no idea. I mean, it was a long time ago. Not in the grand scheme of the universe. But in 1971, not in the grand scheme of the universe, but it is a long time for contemporary music. Anyway, she's dead now. But she was a singer. People wouldn't play that song on the radio because they thought it was sexual innuendo. Imagine how much different the world is. Now they play the songs they play on the radio. And back then, in 1971, you couldn't play a song called I've got a brand new pair of roller skates, you got a brand new key. Because people thought that was sexual innuendo for proposing sexual intercourse. Although Melanie said it wasn't. She just wrote that little thing while high and staring at a pair of roller skates. Who knows? But she said something wise. She said, I view songs like children. You can't. What they're going to do when you write them is out of your hands. They grow up. They go do something. She's like, I couldn't help it that it became a sex song. It wasn't my fault. But it's like I had a child and it grew up to be a whore. I can't do anything about it. And that was it. And we're going to talk about parenting today. And that was Melanie's thoughts on parenting. I don't know that I quite agree with her, but I definitely agree with her about songs. But so we're going to talk about, here's the name of this episode is whatever you name it. But the theme is Esau, like Jacob's brother, who, as you'll note, is a white man with red hair. Spanking and sensitive young men, conservative culture, and I'm going to teach everyone emotional IQ in this one. But first, I have two intro topics. Kev, I don't suppose you read my recent article, which everyone should go read.
Nope.
Thank you. It's about many things, but one of the things is I think I'm the first person to ever bring this up, although it's quite clear. And when you see how clear it is, you're going to say to yourself, Freud was right. I've been wrong about all of my why complaining about psychology isn't real is false, and I was wrong, and Freud and Jung were correct. Because this is so obvious when you see it, you're going to be. But Cavi, I mentioned this in my. Everyone go read it. Subscribe to my Substack. It's very good. But I did a rotation at Emory University, which is it's a research medical center, years ago. And at this place, they would do animal research because, if you're trying to do a new brain surgery technique, Cavi, what are you going to do? What would be your strategy? If you're like, hey, I got this brand new idea for brain surgery, well, how are you going to try it? What are you going to do?
Yeah, you don't have a lot of options if you're not going to just do it to a human of some kind.
If you're not going to just do it to a human. But the thing is, humans can sue you. And also, there's this whole FDA process. So what you do is Emory has this thing called the am I coming through good?
You sound quite good.
Good. Okay. You sound a little subdued. Are you away from your microphone?
I'm like right up to my microphone.
Okay. All right. Anyway, the thing is, they have the Primate Research Center at Emory, which they don't really talk about anymore. They were used to be real proud of it, but in today's day and age, they just sort of want you to forget it's there. But it's definitely there. It's in the middle of Atlanta. It's this building with a bunch of monkeys and chimpanzees in it that they give brain damage to on a regular basis. And other kinds of damage, because they are the test subjects for new fields of surgery and new ideas about how to do different procedures. And also, they do weird stuff, like they try brain to computer interfaces, or maybe, and stuff like that. Like weird things have been done at that place. And anyway, I was just talking about how that goes. And I used to work with a fellow who did not get his degree with monkeys, working on monkeys, but he got his degree working on beagles. Beagles are the #1 dog breed used in medical research. So much so that it may be the case. I don't know the numbers. I'm not going to look them up. I don't know that anyone knows the numbers, actually. I wouldn't trust it. It may be the case that most beagles bred today are bred for scientific research purposes, specifically to be like chopped up and cut open, which is sad. And beagle lovers are not going to like to hear that. But if they do research on dogs, it's almost always a beagle. Because I'm not sure why. I think they're a nice compromise between a big dog that costs a lot of money to feed and has a lot of space, and a small one that has parts too small to work on, I think is the main reason. Because, if you're trying to try heart surgery technique on the mini pocket Chihuahua, it's going to be too small. You want something a little bit bigger, and you don't want to have a Great Dane in there. So they have at various research places, they'll have a bunch of beagles in a room, and I had my colleague, I guess you would call him a colleague. What he would do is he had all these beagles in his lab, and he'd go in and he'd pet them and he'd feed them and he'd let them out to play with each other and all that stuff. But then every, let's say, a couple of weeks, he would set up everything. He had this big table, and he'd clean off the table, and he'd lay out the gloves, he'd lay out all the instrumentation, and there'd be a bunch of things plugged into the wall, more things than you would imagine. A lot of circuitry out in the open, and he would take one of the dogs and sedate it and cut its heart out, and while it was still beating, he would put it on the table and run experiments on it. Right? Have you ever witnessed something like this, Cabby?
Myself personally, no, but I remember back during COVID, everybody was freaking out about Fauci experimenting on beagles.
Yeah, well, he's not alone. That's almost every. So here's how drugs get to you. You do a drug trial, and you start it on mice. This is the basic way. And if it works on mice, you gradually step it up to things closer and closer to people. So you go mice, and then usually dogs. Sometimes there's an intermediate step in there, like a bunny, but most of the time it just goes mice. Then you try it on dogs, and if the dogs don't all die, then you try it on. You may go straight for if the success rate is very good, it may go straight to humans. But oftentimes they'll be like, and then you go to a monkey's, some ape thing, and then you go to people. That's kind of how it goes. And so Fauci is not. I have no doubt that Fauci killed many dogs. Anyone doing research on medicine at all, any kind of when you hear the words medical research, about 50% of the time that means they're taking at least mice and killing them by the millions, but often dogs, monkeys, other things too, and they're doing. So anyway, this fella who was he's a nice guy. I think this made him a little jaded. I think actually this was a traumatizing event for him. He said it wasn't, but what does he know? What does he know? People don't really know about their own traumas. His marriage fell apart. He grew a little indifferent to the suffering of others. And why would you have to, right? Because you have these nice little, they would wag their tails every time you came in. So they had clueless about what they were there for, which made it all the worse. Because at least they should have if they were smart enough to hate you, it would feel like you could have some vengeance toward them. Anyway, I never killed a beagle. I'm just telling you this. This is a thing that happens. And so they would go in there and he'd take the beagles. You'd have to get a little jaded to take all these creatures that are showing you love, and you cut their part out while it's still beating and put it on the table for testing. Anyway, he was this. How do you feel about testing on animals, Cavi? Are you a person that minds it? Do you care if your shampoo is tested on animals? Do you care if your drug? What do you think?
I don't know. I think for certain things, maybe you probably don't really have an alternative.
Right.
But for other things, maybe don't be super cruel about it.
Right. Well, he wasn't. I mean, he would sedate that. They've had good lives until they had their hearts cut out. I mean, as good as they were lab dogs. They didn't go run in the park.
Well, that's the same thing with like the animals I eat. They had a nice life at the farm, and then they got killed and turned into food.
Right. Except these were not turned into food. They were cut open, and their hearts were taken out, and then their bodies were thrown into a furnace.
And how many lives, like human lives, were saved by their testing too?
Well, I don't know about in general. I don't know the answer to that question.
If you're like testing like cosmetics and stuff on animals and like causing a bunch of harm to them, okay, maybe not. But if you like a couple of dogs died to develop a cure for cancer, I don't know. I'm probably cool with that.
Right. And I think that would be most people's answer. I think that is the generally, I know that's the societally accepted answer, even though people pretend it isn't, because that's what society does. But I will say two caveats to that. One, it's not just a couple of beagles; it's a lot of beagles. It's estimated that worldwide, over the entire world, we do scientific research, and I put that in quotes, on around 200 animals. That includes mice. Most of those are mice. The huge proportion of those are mice. Because and then it only goes up to beagles if that's a success. And we probably kill, of those, probably all of them are eventually killed. They don't really adopt them out most of the time. So they're all. So we're killing maybe in the hundreds of millions of animals every year for this purpose. Anyway, that's the one thing. And two, it is questionable. Like, for example, I don't know the exact number of beagle hearts my colleague cut open and put on a table, but it was not one, and it was probably not 100, but it was probably somewhere between 1 and 100 of beagle.
What were they using the hearts for?
Well, that's the thing. So here's the thing. He made something that has yet saved nobody, but maybe save people in the future. He was an extraordinarily smart man, the smartest man I've ever known, personally. And what he would do is he had these, they call them squid magnetometers. And squid stands for, if I remember, superconducting quantum interference device. And you use the QU of the quantum to get the word squid. So superconducting S, quantum QU interference eye device. And the device is just thrown on there to make the acronym work, because otherwise it'd just be SQUI. And a lot of stuff is like that. They just need the acronym to work, so that's the name. So squid magnetometer, and it's this super sensitive magnetic field measuring device, which has to be kept, as all superconducting things do, at like liquid nitrogen temperatures and all this stuff. It can detect, I think, 10 to the minus 17 Tesla, somewhere in there, 10 to the minus 18. To put that in perspective, a fridge magnet is like 10 to the minus 2. So the amount of magnetic field it can detect is ludicrous. And he figured out a way to use the magnetic fields produced by cardiac tissue and smooth muscle, like your bowels, to use the magnetic fields and electrical current running through them in a living being to basically produce. He had the beginnings of he could wave these things over you like a Star Trek tricorder and produce a picture of your internal anatomy on a screen that was 3-dimensional and showed you where it was functioning and where it wasn't. Because if it wasn't functioning, it would have a hole in the data because it was not getting. Could be very useful. You know, you could see in real time what the heart looked like without cutting them open, without doing all the X-ray stuff. You could just and see where it was functioning. Like an X-ray would just, if you're doing like some sort of scan that we have now, you get snippets of it. This would show you like it in real time beating, you know, and you could do it in a little bedside device, probably. Very impressive. Very smart fellow. The problem is, as I mentioned, those squid things are so sensitive that the rest of the patient's body becomes a source of signal interference because there's all those other muscles are also firing. So the one way you could get around that is just cut the piece that you wanted to look out and make it contract with electrodes. So like I want to work on the heart, but all this beagle's other body parts are going to give me signal error. Let's just take the heart out of the thing and set it on the table. And that worked really well, except that doesn't, like if you say to someone, but we got to cut your heart out first. It doesn't really work in a clinical setting for people. If you're trying to heal if you want a picture of the heart, it will still work just fine. But if you want to, like, most people would object to that sort of treatment. So it has not yet gone anywhere. And maybe one day in the future, all the math is done. He figured out all the math. He figured out all the everything, except how to solve the signal interference problem. And if one day someone else comes along and fixes that, you'll have a functioning product. And that will make maybe the deaths of all those beagles worth it. I would say probably 95% of all the research they do on beagles is that, where they go, well, this almost works, but it's never going to come to, and then they would kill it. I don't know. It's a debate. My point is this, Cappy. Do you know what it calls this when you kill animals in science? Do you know what it calls them in like peer-reviewed journals?
Some very nice sounding marketing term, I would imagine.
Well, not really. It's something that goes right past everyone's head. They call it sacrifice. They say the animals were sacrificed.
That's accurate.
The animals were sacrificed. What are they sacrificed to? Well, they're sacrificed. Like a lot of Christian people and other religious people, but mostly Christian, have made the repeated critique that people today worship science or reason or their own intellect. And people poo-poo that and go, man, that's not really a religion. But actually, this is the thing. We are every day acting out the same rituals every pagan religion ever did. Did any pagan religion in the past ever sacrifice?
You were talking about cutting out hearts, and I immediately thought of the Aztecs.
Exactly. He had an altar. He didn't realize it was an altar. You see? This is where Jung... what he was doing with his body subconsciously is he had an altar, and he had ritualistic preparation for it. You made it pure. You cleaned it. You put on gloves so that your venal hands, your vulgar hands, would not touch the holy objects. You wore masks like a shaman. You had a special gown. Like there's this whole, and there's like a ritualistic procedure. Does any of that do anything, actually, though? In this case, probably not. There's very few.
Well,
go ahead.
I'll jump in too. I thought this was super interesting once. I had a family member going in for like a medical procedure, and the I guess like front desk person who was talking to us, English wasn't their first language.
Sure.
So they were like talking about it, and they were like, the ritual is scheduled for next Thursday.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, that's actually incredibly accurate what you just said.
Very accurate. The ritual is scheduled for this Thursday, because it is what we are doing when we do these things. It is ritualistic. And when your eyes are open to that, you're like, oh, whoa, our entire society is subconsciously performing animal sacrifice to the god of our own intelligence or science, right? To some sort of abstract ideal. We're performing mass animal sacrifice, sometimes human sacrifice, to this thing, and we have all of the same steps. We have an altar. We have purification rituals. We have all of the same steps. Like there's and the thing is, Freud would recognize this immediately, and so would Jung, and say, well, see, you're doing this you're actually worshiping and doing all the steps of it without ever even noticing it. But the part of you are not conscious of is nonetheless acting in a very rational way and driving you to do things. Like there's a complete rationale here. There's a pagan rationale at play that people aren't even consciously aware of, that they're nonetheless acting out. And that happens every day on probably a half dozen things you do. And me just telling you that, you're not going to be able to pick up on it most of the time. But if you have this in your mind and start thinking about it, and you watch yourself throughout the day, you're like, why am I doing that? And you're like, oh, right. I am going through some similar such thing that I wasn't even consciously aware of. And so the point in this is to get you to, because this may probably come up in the larger talk, to actually, I know a lot of people are really skeptical about this whole idea of a subconscious, and people were in Freud's time as well, as so were with Carl Jung. Because like, oh wait, I don't think about it, but it has like a reasoning thought process, and the answer is yes, it does. That's why dreams are coherent. You don't come up with your dreams, you don't even understand them, but they have an internal consistency and logic. The subconscious doesn't talk in words, it talks in images, which is why it has to perform things that are highly graphic, cutting out hearts, because that's what it understands. And there's this, it's absolutely present in the abortion thing. Abortion is absolutely sacrificing children to Baal. Well, they're going to mess up the future. Well, just like we sacrifice the animal for a better harvest, we sacrifice the child for a better tomorrow. It's the same logic. It's the exact same logic. And you come up with all these reasons and rationales, but that's all consciously post hoc rationalizations for something that you are subconsciously doing for a completely different reason that you're not even aware of. And this is very disturbing for everybody. No one likes it. Everyone runs away from it. This is partly, I think, why, yes, the drugs. Yeah, okay. Partly, I think, why people took to Jordan Peterson and then trashed him. Not, yes, the drugs were a problem, and yes, he couldn't get over his Zionism. Yes, but also reminding people they have a subconscious that is actively at play. No one likes it. No one likes it. Even a little bit. For example, Cavi, have you ever heard, I will tell you, here's my one foray into the red pill manosphere thing. Have you ever heard the thing about how women love serial killers and bad boys and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think there's something to that. Absolutely. I think they're attracted to the alpha male behavior, and those archetypes tend to exhibit that behavior.
Right, that's the traditional explanation. Here's my explanation: is that they're attracted to alpha male behavior. My explanation for it is actually this, and I think mine is more on the mark. Is that what a lot of women? This isn't all women. Women, calm down. But what a lot of women fear most of all in the sexual realm, because there is a lot of pressure on women to fall into either the Madonna or horror category. They fear very much being judged, and this actually explains a lot of like why why there's like this complaint that men have observed that women will be very sexually promiscuous with men they don't like, really. Sometimes, again, not all women, and very reserved with someone they actually want to marry. It's because they don't see. Here's the thing: the serial killer, to use the most extreme example, is in no position to judge them, and so they're free. You see, he's in no position to judge them, and so that leaves them completely free to act however they feel, and they don't feel like he can judge them, right? And so that specter is not there. And so that, and they don't even understand that behavior themselves or why they're doing it. But that is, I think that makes the most sense of most of the data points that men and women argue about this very thing. Is like, actually, well, what's happening is they're fearing judgment. And so you seek out the person that is least possible of judging you to fulfill whatever your sexual fantasy is in a realm where there is no possible judgment. Right. And Freud would have been like, yeah, of course, that's what's happening. I mean, he even said as much a couple of times somewhere. He said when he was talking about sex relations, he said, yeah, well, the people that fear judgment seek out people that cannot judge them. And this is why people stay with sometimes people that are horrible for them for this and other reasons. Like it's not if you're looking for a rational reason, like there is a rational reason, but it's not conscious. There's another side of you that is fully operating on a different wavelength of logic that the conscious you is not even aware of. And Jung said part of the healing of the spiritual being was bringing those two together so you could like harmonize them. That's debatable. A lot of people debate that, but that's where that whole thing comes from. That'll be helpful later. Number 2, I don't know if this will be helpful, but I want to throw it out there because I think I don't have as much to say on this. What is this on the left, Cavi? Describe what I've attempted to make an AI make here.
Some kind of alien beaver?
Yeah, it's an alien beaver. It didn't do a good job, I don't think. It has a lot of trouble if you ask it to mush two things together. It doesn't really know what to do. It just sort of stuck an alien's head on a beaver's body and then gave it buck teeth and put it in the woods. But this is an alien beaver. And this is Steven Spielberg looking in this photo exceptionally Jewish, I must say. He looks like a caricature of a Jewish person. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I didn't do that on purpose. I just noticed that now. Not that there's anything wrong with looking exceptionally like a Jewish person. There's not. Nothing at all. There's a guy down the street from me who looks like the most Italian man I've ever seen. The most Italian person that's ever existed. It just so happens that in this photo, Steven Spielberg looks incredibly Jewish. He has a new film coming out called Disclosure Day about. Anyway, he went on this whole spiel about how it would challenge Christianity if they discovered and Judaism. To his credit, he also talked about Judaism and Islam and how it would mess up a lot of people's faith if we didn't contact aliens. To which a lot of people said no, it wouldn't. But of course it would. There's another subconscious thing. They're like, oh, I could handle that. No, you couldn't. If you discovered there was other, because all the theological problems crop up so quickly, you haven't even begun to think of. Like, did they sin? These other intelligent life forms, are they under sin? Are they immortal? Did they die? If they're not, if they die, did they also have a fall, or did our fall get their fall? Did Jesus die for? There's so many problems. So many problems. Thankfully, space isn't real, so none of this is ever going to happen. But and no one is. It's not ever going to happen. And there's a subconscious reason why you want to believe in space too, which I could go into another day, but I'm not going to. But my point is, no, very few people. I heard someone bring this up years and years ago, and I haven't heard it since. And I don't know who it was, or I would give them credit. But it may have been me. I may have said this to myself in a dream. I don't know. But just because let's say there was aliens. Let's say, okay, for the sake of argument, let's say space is real. Hello, Dean. Yeah, some of us don't have to live in reality. Let's say for a second that space is real, and that there are UFOs coming here. Why do we assume? What in that makes us assume that the things piloting it would in fact be intelligent? Have you ever wondered that question, Cavi?
Well, you think there's just like animals visiting us? Alien animals?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a different, why not? If you have the theory of evolution and it goes as they say it does, there is no reason that a species, just as a beaver instinctually builds dams, could not evolve to just by instinct, without really knowing what anything does, build spaceships. There's no real actual reason. It sounds complicated, but then we're saying oh, well, your eye evolved. And that's ridiculous. I mean, it's so complicated. The evolution of an eyeball is 1,000 times more complicated than it would be to evolve a species that put things together in a certain way such that it made a spaceship. Because
I think to make a spaceship that can travel that distance requires a very high level of intelligence.
Why?
You think you're just doing a wind blows through a junkyard and assembles an entire airplane argument?
No. The beaver alien creatures would put it together.
With what tools?
With tools that they made.
They would just somehow evolve the knowledge to build an interstellar engine.
They don't have the knowledge. There would just be a series of evolutionary incentives, which cause them to make all the artifacts necessary for the creation of all the tools necessary to, and they just like beavers build dams. They started out for some reason long ago. Who knows why the first beaver picked up a stick? Under evolutionary theory, why did the first beaver ever pick up a stick? We don't know, but he picked up a stick and then he put that stick on another stick. He picked up a stick and he put that stick on another stick, and he dug a hole in there and he put it in a river in a certain way. And this is all instinctual evolution, evolved behavior. Just like bees built a beehive, and they built it in nice organized rows.
Yeah, I get it. So this is just on an exponentially more complicated level then.
Right. And I grant you that does seem far-fetched. But if we're dealing with aliens, you can't throw anything out.
Here's another whole idea you could use too, though, because in sci-fi, you'll have some kind of aliens that just live in space. You'll have giant space whales or something that just travel through space. So something like that could happen, and they don't have to construct anything then.
Or wasn't that the case in Starship Troopers? Wasn't that the case? That
it's been so long since I've seen that.
Yeah. Hey, let's see. I think
I remember they were bugs and they had to go to their planet.
They were bugs and they had to go to their planet. But I think the bug aliens could live in space, and then they just drifted from one planet to another. I don't remember. There have been. I think Warhammer 40K, the bug-like aliens do that. They're just like a space hive. They're not really intelligent, but their bodies can live in vacuum and they can propel themselves by some means. So there is no. I'm just bringing up the idea. I don't think this will be relevant to the larger show, But I'm bringing up the idea that perhaps there's actually no reason to assume that just because something got here, it is intelligent. It does seem like, because that's what we would do. But you have no idea how evolution would play out somewhere else, or how long
not
it's
only
been going.
that is you're thinking of it with human intelligence, and who even knows how an alien intelligence would even like be.
Exactly. When you're talking about something alien, like actually alien, it could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. Cavi, talk for
Yeah, everybody has like the Star Trek conception of aliens, where it's like just guys, humanoids wearing a mask, but they like think and act and behave exactly like us. But in that was what was that movie where there was the giant squid aliens show up, and the woman had to decipher their language, and it was a completely different like alien writing system. It would be something like that, like completely beyond our comprehension.
If they even had writing, they may not have any reason.
Yeah, or if they had telepathy or something.
Yeah, or if they even felt the need to communicate. I don't know. I mean, like, we think communication is this big deal. They may not. They may be one super organism that just has. There's all kind of different options. When you're talking about something that's alien, it's like you really have. If people's imagination is so small.
Yeah, there's lots of cool sci-fi stuff out there, but yeah, most people just think of humanoid Star Trek aliens in a mask.
Didn't Star Trek explain that by saying that all the humanoid aliens were like panspermiaed by some proto-humanoid race a billion years ago?
I don't know that, but I think I heard somebody try to explain something once where it's like the optimum evolutionary path is to evolve in like a symmetrical body with two legs or something.
Yeah. But maybe the UFO occupants would be this guy. They may not even. They just may be space animals that happen to build spaceships. That'd be weird. But I mean, what we're saying under evolutionary theory is that organisms, single-celled organisms, somehow learn to work together to make an eyeball, to all grow into specialized pieces to make an eyeball that would connect to a larger brain. That's crazy. That's a huge. That's no less ridiculous of a leap than saying individual organisms evolved to work together to construct a thing that went into orbit. I mean, it's just not. It's the same. Like it's the same level of complexity, if not less so. Just throwing that out there. I think Steven Spielberg was correct that everyone poo-pooing him is anti-Semitic. That's my no. I think they think way too highly of their ability to cope with. You guys have barely figured out how to survive the Industrial Revolution with your religion. I don't think you would hold up near as good as you. It's like Pope, what's his name, Leo. He released that document about AI, which everyone assumed would be down on AI, but really actually wasn't. If you read it, he released that thing on AI, and I thought my first thought was like, I mean, that's nice, I guess, but one, I don't think Catholicism has learned how to deal with electricity yet. To be honest, the Papal States tried to ban streetlights because you're destroying the natural rhythm that God made for people to wake up and sleep, and that's going to throw everything. And they still have. I mean, you're having every Christian denomination, every religion actually, is having enough trouble with the smartphone. I don't think you would handle aliens nearly as well as you, because they would come here and they'd say, "Oh, well, we have this whole other." If they were intelligent, not space beavers, they would come here and say, "We have this whole other religion, and we have interstellar travel, so ours is obviously better." And you'd be like, "Well, yeah, I guess." And then if you go into space, all of the prophecy things are about, like, Jesus comes back. Well, which planet does he come back to? Earth. Okay, he remakes Earth, but what about the people that are now on Betazoid? And there's so many problems that with a future of Christianity or Islam or Judaism or most of them, where you are spacefaring people. You'd have to have a completely different religion if you had a religion at all. It wouldn't survive. It wouldn't survive at all. In Warhammer 40K, I never played this, but I like to listen to the lore. I think there was in that game. What's the game they made in space that was the people that made Skyrim made it, and it kind of flopped. What was that called?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. And I forgot the name already because it flopped so hard.
Yeah, it was like a Skyrim in space. But anyway, there's apparently a quest line where you, not a quest, but you can meet the last practicing Jew in the future. He's the last one. Yeah.
Why are there Jews in all these games?
Well, that's the thing. Here's the thing about it. In this game, I haven't played it. You have an alignment like good or evil, like you be good or bad, and there's like a score. If you do good deeds, you get more good points. If you do evil deeds, you get. And you can meet the last Jew. Everyone else has moved on from religion in this space, or they have space religion. And this is the guy. He's like on some moon base and around some other planet. And he's the last practicing Jew. And apparently, if you kill him, you don't get negative points, and you may even get positive ones. I'm not. It's not part of any quest, but I don't know if that was a message that the people of the. You know what? I don't endorse it.
That's almost as absurd as in The Last of Us 2, when in the zombie apocalypse, and you go through the synagogue and you talk about oh no, it's a Holocaust museum you go through, and then the one character is Jewish and talking about how her people are survivors. And
this is not a thing. No one has imagination. You're gonna have to have if you want to survive the future intact, your mind intact, your soul perhaps. You're going to have imagination. You can't just keep on pretending it's the year 1873 and that you live in papal-controlled Italy and that you're an Amish. Like, you have to have. You can't just. All your aliens can't be carbon copies of people with forehead wrinkles, and you have to be able to step outside your own thing to be like, well, okay, in the zombie apocalypse, where. Conservatively in those games and in the TV show, I never played the games, but I watched the TV show. I would say upwards of 99% of all people died or were infected. Does that seem right? I mean, it's a lot.
In the game, when you're traveling through the world, like its entire cities are just completely abandoned and overgrown.
Yeah, there's like small groups of people living out but like most people have been taken out by this.
Yeah, everything's wrecked.
In that world, the sympathy for people going through the Holocaust is gone because every single person alive has been through something a magnitude worse. So, and people don't. It's like, no, you have to be able to step out. You've created a world where you made something worse, and so now they're not going to be filled. They're not going to have all this like people. And I think the girls that go through that were born after the apocalypse.
They were born after the apocalypse, and they're also lesbians.
Yeah, 2 lesbians born after the zombie apocalypse to a world with like 1,000 people left on it are not going to care about the suffering of Jews in the 1940s. It just wouldn't happen. It's silly.
Yeah, their parents still taught them, and she knew all the information and history about it.
Yeah, just like, by the way, if beaver aliens came, you'd have to really rethink a lot of your priors. Now, thankfully, they're not gonna come because they don't exist. I don't think, and space isn't real. But if beaver aliens or normal aliens did come, Steven Spielberg is 100% correct, despite him looking like the Merchant of Venice here, which again I did not do on purpose. I'm sorry, Steven. I like Jurassic Park. Thank you. But that you would have to rethink so much. You have to rethink so much. And like I said, you guys can barely handle the smartphone. You're not going to be able to handle aliens and flying saucers. It just won't happen. Anyway.
How about that one-eye symbolism in the bird on that Disclosure Day poster?
Yeah, I know. There's always one-eye symbolism. It's just always in the bird.
I don't know what's up with that bird. There's another one where it's like clearly the Saturn symbolism too. And
yeah.
Always something.
Yeah, I don't know. There's always something. You burn yourself out trying to figure it out. Esau spanking and sensitive young men. There is no such thing as, quote, conservative culture. And I'm going to teach you all emotional IQ. Here's Esau and Jacob both depicted as very white individuals. Esau means red, and David was said to be red, which could be their skin color, maybe sunburned, or they had red hair. I don't know. I'm just saying this idea that the Jews, the Israelites weren't Arabs. That's all. It's just true. They weren't Arabs. I don't know what they looked like exactly, but they weren't Arabs. Here's a guy
They were
spanking.
black.
I don't think they were black either. Maybe a couple were. I don't know. Moses is said to have that wife from the Ethiopia. I don't know. Anyway, here's a guy spanking a kid in the woodshed and a picture of a sensitive young anime man. Okay, so I wanted to bring this is a interesting thing. Sam Hyde, you familiar with Sam Hyde?
Yep.
Here's some pictures. He made this post and it sent the quote unquote right wing quote unquote dissidents, although they aren't either of those things, into a tizzy. He said, hitting your kids, this is his words. He's talking about spanking. Hitting your kids is in response to a New York Post article that says, quote, shocking number of millennial and Gen Z parents spank their kids, study says. Quote, necessary to raise a child properly. Now, first of all, this is almost entirely, I would guarantee you, Mexican parents. No, I'm just saying, spanking is largely falling out of favor with white people, but and that's who runs the New York Post. I know Melky's rolling his eyes, but people that read the New York Post are mostly white people, and they're upset about that idea. But Mexicans have no issue spanking their children. And there's a lot more. Every one of these things you see about some generational difference is almost always a demographic.
It's not just Mexicans. It's anybody who's not white.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like my wife is completely cool with spanking kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, this is the idea that it isn't okay to spank a child is a very, very current year white person thing that no other ethnicity shares at all. And so when you have less, every single thing you see which says millennials and Gen Z do this, oh, isn't that different? It's always because the answer is always, well, the country is far less white than it used to be. That's why. That's why it's different. But anyway, Sam Hyde said, hitting your kids is in the same category as circumcision, iPads, strict adherence to the CDC vaccine schedule. It is for, these are his words, Inns, Goyim, and Walmart pajama people. I like that. Walmart pajama. It lowers IQ, and he cites some guy. Increases aggression, cites another guy. Is less effective than a timeout, requires escalation, yada, 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 yada. And he goes on. Because if you hit your kids, you will create permanent emotional distance with the only people you could ever be close to, not to mention sending them down the road of being as much a loser as you are, who will hit their own kids or won't, but only after spending a decade figuring out why they reflexively apologize all the time. And this created, of the people that follow him, two distinct camps. I just took samples. And I think this is representative of the two distinct people that would probably have voted for Donald Trump. Two very groups. One I would call the Luftwaffe, who are always bringing up a very extreme politics, but then when you actually ask them about things in specific, they're extremely anti-violent. It's very weird. The whole Hitler thing is a front for most of them, for them actually being quite sensitive and unwilling, do not want to do violence. I know that's weird, but that is my observation. The people least likely to do violence are the people that most talk about Hitler, which is weird. In almost every case. And I think it is, again, going back to Freud, it's a subconscious thing of trying to project more toughness than they actually feel. So there's the Luftwaffe, and then there's the country music dad. This is a false dichotomy, but these are the two people on the quote-unquote right. And then this, the Luftwaffe said, samurai and other historical aristocrats would refuse to discipline their children through beating or harsh words because they believed it crushed the warrior spirit. Beating children is for slaves and peasants who are used to that same treatment from their overlords. And then this other guy, there's a bunch of, it's like, no, the Bible says smack him around a bit, and so forth and so on.
Do you know who Russell Peters is?
Russell Peters. The name sounds familiar, but I don't know who he is. No.
He's
it's
a
probably
comedian.
because Russell and Peters are very common names, but
yeah, he's a comedian. I think he's ethnically Indian, but he's from Canada. He has a great comedy bit about parents, please beat your kids.
Parents what?
Please beat your kids.
Oh, really?
It's hilarious.
So and no judgment to anyone out there about what you feel about this topic. But I do think there's a my question is that I'm going to answer here. Try to answer. Do conservative parents produce leftist children? I think the answer is very often yes. And my question is, but why? And I think the thesis I'm working with here is that, and again, back to Freud and subconscious drives, most of leftism today is a reaction against dad. Not all of it unjustified. You got to remember, a lot of millennials and people born later than that, and Gen Xers even, were born into families that broke apart, and dad lived somewhere else and had different, and mom was dating around, and like their whole that really does scar children. I know people don't like to hear that, but it does, because you've basically, dad or mom is saying that the people that brought you into existence, who are supposed to love you, no longer love each other, and both of them have decided, in most cases, not everyone, some don't do this, but that going off and having sex with some other person is more important than being around you. And children know that. They won't be able to put it that eloquently, but they feel that. And so I'm not saying that this reaction is entirely bad. There's a reason that divorce is bad. It's because it harms children, among other things. Also, you're breaking your vow. You are not being, all these, you're being to your partner, all these things, but there's a reason that it's bad. And there's a reason that it was very hard to obtain for a long time. And, anyway, so there is a reason for that. But beyond that, I think there is I'm going to side with both sides here a little bit, but I think the side I can reach the most is conservative music dad. Luftwaffe is not, they're not going to be as moved. But country music dad, I think I can help show you something here that I hope, again, no. Meine Frage ist, that's German for my question is. So here's traditional conservative dad starter pack. You remember these things? They were memes a long time ago, starter packs.
Yep.
It says, I believe in hard work and personal responsibility. It's got Hank Hill, Bill O'Reilly.
Did you make this starter pack yourself?
No, I found it online, but it's pretty good. Dallas Cowboys symbol, guitar, country built on Judeo-Christian values with whoever that guy is, Pat, whatever. Fox News, quote, there's only one race, the human race. New Balance sneakers. The Bible, George W. Bush, and chewing tobacco. Surely we're past all that racism now. And this is what the country music dad write. And by the way, the Luftwaffe doesn't have children. Sam Hyde has no kids. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That said, he does have a point here that is important. Country music dad usually has kids, but he doesn't. But he's going by this. But this isn't working. Like he's has the starter pack, but the children this brings up is people like this picture here with people like holding up signs about abortion and Black Lives Matter and all their. Not that Black Lives don't matter, but that's obviously a psyop the way it's done, and people get upset and they're screaming, "It's not working!" All the children of these people have purple hair, not all of them, but what I'm saying is this method of parenting is not producing the outcomes that people would like, and they are not having children. Here's a graph. Fertility has fallen off a cliff since 2008, and it's just terrible. So did this strategy give you the society that you want? And the answer, I think, is no. I don't think conservatives are happy where the country is going. And what no one ever wants to do, which I constantly bring up, is, well, then maybe you should reevaluate where you start your priors, and no one ever wants to do that, ever, at all. Did it produce kids living the life you'd want them to? Are they healthy, happy? Is your genetic line continuing on? All these things. And so I think there is an issue. As much as and listen, I'm not going to beat on them at all. The dads like this have held the country together in like the most literal way. Am I still there? It says I'm unstable. Am I still here?
I didn't hear you for a second, but then you suddenly
Okay.
came back.
Okay, I'm back. I'm not going to beat on these people at all, the dads at all. That's not my intention, because literally they're the ones doing most of the stuff that holds the country together, like making sure the electricity's on, making sure there's food on the table, making sure that the dam isn't overflowing, all those things, right? Very important. However, there is an issue in that it is not raising children that you would want to have. Probably it's raising people that have issues, mental issues. Complaints about white men are just traumas about dad. I think that is true, and I know that's upsetting to hear. But in almost every, like, here's a bunch of white people holding up a sign that says "White people, we need to talk," and they're white. And this lady's dressed as the sunshine. I don't understand why. She's insane. She's this little girl whose dad was maybe too harsh with her, and has grown up to wear a sunshine and a white weird skirt that says whiteness is a disease. And all that is, I promise you, Freud would clock this 100%. And I gave you this thing about the pagan because you don't understand. These kids out here on the college campus they're not consciously aware that they're reacting against dad, but they are. In the same way that people aren't consciously aware they're making pagan sacrifices to the god of science, but they are. Okay. And the reason that more girls have gone this way than boys is because girls are more sensitive, and so anything that you, not always, but in many cases, any sort of like trauma like this will. And so, I'm not saying that there's no time for ever corporeal punishment, spanking, for example. But I do think that the way a lot of children have been raised is not, it may have, the thing is, I think, Cavi, before I go into this, what's your stance on spanking and stuff? Where do you stand? What do you feel?
Oh, so there was like several times I was a kid I got spanked. So for most of my life, I assumed it was kind of a normal thing, and especially seeing how it's not an issue at all for non-white people, because other cultures will just outright beat their kids.
Yeah.
But Sam Hyde makes some points. Stefan Molyneux is another big anti-spanking guy. They make some valid points. Like the one thing they'll say is like, does your kid understand why you're spanking them?
Right.
If it's no, because they're too young, then like, what's the point? Like, if you can't reason to them and explain why you're doing it,
right,
you're just basically beating them and they don't understand. But if they're old enough to understand, then why don't you just explain, and why do you have to spank them?
Right. And the people who cite the Bible, spare the rod, spoil the child, and people that are more sensitive, let's say if you're an Episcopalian or an Anglican or even Catholics, they will try to say, well, no, it's the rod of discipline. It's the rod of no, it means like hit them with a stick. Now, are you, listener, even country music dad, comfortable with hitting your child with a stick? Because that's what the Bible's. So if you're not, you're already not. Let's understand it a little bit here. Okay, it's absolutely about here, and most cultures in the world, even today, it is not uncommon for a disgruntled parent, mom or dad, to take a stick, maybe a broom handle, maybe a stick from the tree, and to whack their children with it. A couple of times by my grandparents, I got switched. Not very often. You know what switched is?
Yeah, they like make some sticks into like a whip.
Well, they take a thorny a switch is like a thorny branch, and they
Go
cut it
outside
off.
and cut me a switch.
Yeah, and they cut the branch off, and then they would whack the back of your legs with it. And that is a very this is not like It's a very common thing. And I will say that it's common for a reason. If you're like out on a farm, you probably don't have the time nor space to, or even the ability to deal with people's. Well, let me go back. The reason the past is the way it was is because people had no ability to deal with their emotions. And there were some good things about the past. But you have to remember, when you read about like medieval battles or something, you got to imagine it like it's not like fully grown men fighting it a lot of times. We're talking like there are kids out there that are 15 years old, dressed in a suit of armor, hacking at each other with an axe. This is not fully formed adults with like, and they're raising children, in that environment as well, and so forth and so on. And I think you just had to, right? But a lot of the reason the past is the way it was is because it was run by, most of the actions are being done. You got to remember, like people had bar mitzvahs at 12 or whatever. Like when you're 12, you're like a man. It's time to go do everything. And nowadays that seems kind of crazy to entrust a 12-year-old to like the full responsibilities of adulthood. And there are pros and cons with that. There is something to be said for we have extended adolescence and it's a problem. Understood. You're correct. Also, though, if we let 12-year-olds run the world, we'd probably have a lot more problems. Okay. So I'm not blaming anyone or whatever, but I do think that, again, if you look at the results, most of the places that beat their kids with sticks aren't the best. Just an observation. They're not the best place you would want to live. Now, maybe they have less social problems in a way, like they don't have people that hate their, that like trying to constantly overthrow the government. I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. But anyway, my point is, here's a picture of what a lot of conservative dads are. And again, I'm not trying to love conservative dads, but there's a lack of wisdom happening, I think. Again, there's a lack of wisdom. What they need you to be is this guy on the right here, like a marble statue, Greek statue guy who is very wise and strong. And you don't want to be someone that's fearful and angry. And oftentimes moral rigorism, like spare the rod, spoil the child, can be rooted in fear. That if you don't beat the child, they're going to go off course. If you don't, what will happen if they grow up and don't? What will happen if my song Brand New Key grows up and becomes a sex song? I better make sure it doesn't, right? That's sort of like fear. Yeah, right. Like I said, no desire to bash anybody. I don't want the conservative dads are objectively the ones holding material society together. They're doing all the hard jobs. They're doing all the things. There is a problem happening because the outcome is not getting what they would want. And I want them to reevaluate their priors, not to say that everything's bad that they're doing, but that there is something amiss going terribly wrong because their children are growing up with purple hair and screaming with posters and aborting their grandkids, right? So we have to go back. I tell you a story. Maybe. See the maybe? Isn't that clever? Maybe with a little b. I have a friend who's possibly divorcing in the middle of it. I call him on phone to talk and try help. And he say to me, here's what he say to me. I start asking him about, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. And he says to me, his wife blew up at him the other day because he went to the bathroom, which sounds and is insane. It is crazy. He said, I went to the bathroom. She said, I came back and she like slammed her hands down. She was like cooking something, slammed her hands down on the kitchen stove. Was like, you never even asked to like leave if it's okay to leave. And, and to go to the bathroom. And he's like, well, you want me to? And she's like, and they just spiral into this whole problem. And so I was like, okay, that does sound a little unhinged. Yes. Let's talk through it. And tell me, when did this behavior? And we talked through it. And he said, well, she's been like this off and on for a couple of years, but it really got bad in January when her father died. And they all went up for the funeral in some other state. They went north for a funeral, or maybe south. It doesn't matter. They went a direction for a funeral. And, and he had to go back for work early, and she stayed with her mom for a little while longer. And then he told me the story like, oh, well, her mom, they got in yelling matches. And I said, is it possible she was abused as a child? And he responded with, from what I understand, she was abused in every way but sexual by her mother. And I asked more about her, and this is true for a lot of people. So many issues are from childhood abuse. Again, Freud knew what he was talking about. Her dad was a truck driver, and he was gone all the time. And so I started piecing it together, and I said to him, well, buddy, here's the problem. And again, I'm not casting blame on him, because the way she is acting is a little crazy. But I said, what seems to be the issue here is that she has abandonment issues because she was being abused by someone, and her father was always gone, not protecting her. And the thing is, yes, he's providing for the family, but he missed a provision in a way that really mattered. Money isn't the only thing this is my message. Money isn't the only way to provide, and it isn't anywhere near the most important. It's one of the ways, right? But it's not. People think it's just, they hear provider and it's like, oh yeah, bring in the money. No, it's like there's safety, emotional security, just being present and all that. And I said, so you also, I asked him, he works all the time. And so she blew up. This is my hypothesis. I said, she blew up at you. And this started after her dad died, because now her dad is really and truly gone. He's dead. And so she is feeling that afresh. And the man in her life she has now, which she hopes for emotional security from, protection from, etc., is in the same way always gone for work and not there. And I said, she's probably, thinking like, oh, he's in the living room. She turns around, you're not there. And that just triggers like, oh, I can't ever count on him to be there. It's not so much that you have to ask to go to the bathroom, which is the way he felt about it. It's that she has no certainty that she can count on his presence when she needs him. And that's scary, and it brings up all the things, right? And am I correct? I don't know, but he said that does sound like maybe that could be part of the problem. So hopefully they will work through this. Because, and again, he said to me he said that sounds like it could be part of the problem, but his words were, it's not my responsibility to be like, she should be able to realize that's crazy and not picture me as her in the place of her abandoning father and all this. Yes, right. But what are we talking? But what do you want, patriarchy or not? Right? Patriarchy isn't just demanding things. It is, you have to actually earn the patriarchy by being someone that provides safety, love and security, and emotional regulation and all those things if need be. And you can, and again, this is the lie of equality. This is why it's bad, because men and women actually aren't equal, and women are not as capable of dealing with their various emotions and emotional outbursts and feelings as men are. And so when you're trying to hold her to the standard of a man, like that's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay. So that's the thing. And I feel like a lot of the issues that are happening in modern, that you hear over and over and over again in the red pill manosphere, from women complaining about men complaining about women. I see it all the time on social media. This is like the common theme. They can't get the same ground. Because they are working on a false assumption that men and women, this is why that men and women are the same basically, and they just have different plumbing. That's not true. They're not, right? They need different things from each other, and you cannot just say, "Oh, well, she should act like a man," and the woman can't just expect him to know what is not. That's not going to work. Okay, so he doesn't want to help with the housework, right? I will translate that for you. He's not present, and that registers as not caring, because the guys will go, what do you mean you're like, I'm at work all the time, right? I don't have time for the housework, and isn't that we could just, what do you mean I'm not contributing, and so forth and so on, right? And you are doing that, but here's the female feeling about it. I didn't marry you to be at work all the time. I married you to have a life together, not one we do at separate parts and then just kind of hang out once in a while, and then you want sex from me. Right? Is this making sense, Cavi? Are you still there? Yes. How you feel?
This is fairly like I've read relationship stuff like this. This makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, like, so it is not that, because see, this is the thing, and this is the holdover of country music, Dad. And again, this was probably more necessary back in when you were subsistence farming. The main thing that needed to happen was you just needed to have food, potatoes. Like potatoes needed to be grown, otherwise you would starve to death. But that's not so much of an issue anymore, right? And maybe there was a time, like you're just busy. Although there was a lot of time back that people were just alcoholics. I mean, there was a lot of issues in the past. The past was also great, both. But providing and safety isn't just about money, right? That's the thing. It's not just about like it's. And the reason that the woman is not able to put it in this way, he's not present and that register is not carrying, is because she doesn't know. She doesn't. What do you know about what you're feeling, right? My dad was emotionally abusive. Translated, I didn't feel like I could talk to my father because he had firm convictions about right and wrong, and I felt he would judge me for having feelings or thoughts that were wrong. You're like, what do you mean I was emotionally abusive? I never but their feeling is, and again, it doesn't matter if you think it makes sense. Feelings are not, they don't make sense. Facts don't care about your feelings, and feelings do not care about your facts. If you are a person with very strong moral convictions, good. However, if that translates to, well, when someone in my life I care about has an alternative feeling, and they don't feel like they can come to you to express it because they feel like you will shut them down immediately, that feels like an emotionally abusive relationship, which is what a lot of these women are talking about. But they can't put it this way because they don't understand men the way that, some can. This is the fuel for the more aggressive points of the LGBT movement. A lot of them take a kind of pleasure in the fact that their dad is not happy with their lifestyle. And like Milo Yiannopoulos is a great example. He said, I specifically became gay. Now, did he not? He probably had gay inclinations. But he said, I specifically started it to get back at my mom because I knew she would hate it. And he said, I specifically chose black guys because I knew she didn't like them. She was racist. And that's happening so much. So much of this is the breakdown of family dynamics. So much of it. Again, not your fault. A lot of it comes down to the different roles people have had to fulfill after the Industrial Revolution, and then like what you were doing then doesn't work now. There's all these problems, right? I'm just saying you have to think about it. You have to be wiser now. You have to be wiser than you used to be, okay? To make the world work. The world is more complicated. All right? And so a lot of people only experienced their dad's presence when he hit them, quote unquote, spanking them, or told them they were wrong. Right? Here's a guy. He's a church guy. He's talking with his pink-haired daughter, and it says, I wish you never left the church. Conservative dad and liberal daughter. Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? And I think it is. I think the flaw, the Achilles heel in country music, Dad, is the feeling that he has to derive. He has to work. He feels that his value to his family comes primarily from the work that he does in a job, and that's a very strong feeling, and it's one hard to get over. He feels like if I'm not going to work, sacrificing my time, my life, like it's not even that they enjoy the work so much, although some of them do become workaholics. It's that like, well, they need to. There's a rat race. Money's hard to get. They need a good college education. I got to do everything I can, but actually, you need to also be prioritizing spending a lot of time with them, your family, and making sure that if you do have a daughter or a son that has unorthodox feelings, unorthodox thoughts, that they feel perfectly comfortable bringing them up to you, and you're not going to just shut them down. You can say like, oh, yeah, I mean, I can see how you would think that. Here's why I don't, but you leave it open. They will. The thing is, if you're right and you can make a good case, they will often, you have to trust they'll come around on their own. Because if you just swat them down, it feels like a rejection of if you reject someone's feelings, it feels like you reject them. And I know that is I know you're like, that's not the way adult men work. I know, but you're not working with adult men. You're working with children and women. You can't treat them like it doesn't, right? It doesn't. Adult men, when they're out working on an oil rig, you just like, shut up, do the thing. But that's not how children and women work. Okay. Tough love is sometimes necessary, but most of the time, I see it used by people. I get the feeling that it isn't, right? And what people will say is, X happened to me and I turned out just fine. And that is the quote from the most maladjusted person alive. Every time I've ever heard someone say that. Have you ever heard people say, X happened to me and I turned out fine?
Yep.
Seems like it's always spoken by someone's like, buddy, your life is in shambles. What are you talking about? They don't even realize it.
Lots of phrases are like that. It's always money doesn't buy happiness, said by a rich person.
Yeah, money doesn't buy happiness, or someone like, and I think they're right. Money doesn't buy happiness, but a certain happiness, a certain level of poverty is a big barrier to happiness. You don't have to be rich, but if you're struggling to get by, it can be a barrier. But it's this whole thing. Anyway. Okay, corporal punishment. Punishing the corpus, the body, right? Does it work? Is it justifiable? And if so, when? Do you know this guy is up here with the white hair and the glasses?
Not at all.
Take a guess.
He looks very smart. I'm gonna guess some kind of famous child psychologist.
Well, close. He's another psychologist. He's B.F. Skinner, the behavioralist.
Oh, okay.
You ever heard of B.F. Skinner?
I've heard of him. I just never actually saw a picture of him.
Yeah, B.F. Skinner. Here he is with his younger self in a book he wrote called Beyond Freedom and Dignity. If that doesn't give you an insight into his worldview, writing a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity by B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner was a smart guy. You were right. He was a smart guy. His smartness led him down a road that I would not be the thing. But does corporal punishment work? The answer is 100%. Everyone telling you, like Sam Hyde, like it doesn't work, it makes us. It absolutely works. Okay, and it can absolutely work. Anyone who tells you that corporal punishment doesn't work to change people's behavior is either misinformed, lying, or pushing an agenda. There's no. B.F. Skinner, with the correct rewards and punishments, showed you could make animals do just about anything. Like the craziest sets of ritual dances, and he had these pigeons, and he could teach them to do marvelous things by giving them a treat when they succeeded and giving them an electric shock when they didn't do what he wanted. Here's a picture of a rat that he tested, and he's standing. It's sort of cut off in this picture, but he's standing on an electrified grid, and if he does the wrong thing, he gets shocked. And the rat learns real quick what gives a shock, and he stops doing it. Right? This it absolutely works, and he developed a whole school called behavioralism, where he thought, this is an intellectual descendant of Freud and Jung, B.F. Skinner. However, they got a little bit psychology by the time the 1950s and 60s rolled around, or whenever he was. I think it was about, I don't remember the exact time. They were getting a little like everyone else. They were like, this subconscious thing is really a bugbear, and working with it is hard, and it also makes us uncomfortable because we have one. So what if instead of all that, what if we just focused exclusively on surface level behavior? The problem is, said B.F. Skinner and others, it's not your relationship with your parents or like society's traumas upon you or your internal feelings about God and your lostness. That's not the problem. The problem is you yell too much in class, or you throw out garbage on the road. How can we don't care a damn about your internal state. How do we change your behavior? This is a weird term for psychology to take but behavioralism is a branch of psychology that said, screw all that internal stuff. How do we just manipulate people's behavior? Interestingly, this is pretty much the only one used in public schools. Again, because it's easier. Kids having emotional problems, that's tough. Changing their behavior. How do we do that? Well, rewards and punishments of a certain way. And if you go to any public school in America today of size, small one out in the country, maybe not, they will probably have employed a behaviorist, a person employed to use B.F. Skinner's methods to alter the behavior of problem children. And it works. Now, it would work better and faster if they were still allowed to electrocute them, because they used to. People got feeling that was bad. But they said, well, it worked really well on mice and doves. I bet if we put electrodes on this problem child, it will also and it did. Oh, it worked so fast. If a kid was shouting curse profanity, if a kid has Tourette's and you put a shock collar on them, and every time they say a curse word, they get shocked, they stop. They learn. They do learn. It is possible. Right? But people didn't like that. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying objectively, you can change that behavior with pain. 100% you can. Now, and I'll be honest with you, I have some familiarity with behavioralism and the way it's applied in schools today. And I think there is room for a little bit more pain as punishment. For example, I know of a child who is let's see, I don't know, she maybe in 10th grade, maybe 9th, I don't remember, somewhere in there. Almost an adult. Very large, both in height and for a lady and in weight. She has mental handicapped issues, right? Okay. And she will, if there's something you want her to do, and she doesn't want to do it, what she does is she just locks her whole body. And the stories that behaviorists could tell you about the problems that children have in school are so crazy and outlandish. Because, George W. Bush had a good idea, I think, with the No Child Left Behind program. In practice, there are some children that probably just don't need to be in the same school. I know that's upsetting to hear, but there are kids out there with real problems. Anyway, she just locks her joints up. She can't be moved. You try to move her out of her seat, she's not violent, but she will just stay there for hours. And it's like, well, we can't, this is a problem because the school's closed now. We're not actually supposed to be caring for you after school hours. That's like a legal issue. Your parents have to take you home. You have to be fed. You have to be all these things. Just hours locked up. And if electrodes were allowed to be used in this scenario, she probably would stop that pretty quick, or some other pain method. And I think you could make an argument that in some cases that is actually more compassionate, because you are moving that you are this behavior that has sucked up years of their lives. you get to you can just get rid of by teaching them to associate with pain. Sometimes I think that is the best option. Again, very judicious use would have to be applied, and I don't know that I trust anyone in the public education system to actually apply, which no one else does either, which is why it's not. But in a perfect world run by perfect people who could make such a judgment, probably putting electrodes on children would be occasionally for the best. What do you think, Cavi? Are you pro or anti putting electrodes on children?
I would probably lean to against, but like you said with your example, like some kids, they just need a smack.
Yeah, exactly. Like the problem with this child is that.
But again, like, how would you even allow that kid to get to that point in the first place?
Right. I mean, well, I know. Yeah. Like, but the thing is,
but parenting is hard.
Yeah. And once they've got to that point, what do you do?
Yeah.
So many issues. Okay. So, the point of all that saying is that pain compliance does work, and they used to use it on children in school. Anyone saying that that teaching people by pain doesn't work is not informed correctly. It absolutely works. However, you can do other things. You can do other kinds of punishments, other kinds of rewards, and these are being used on you. So the classical conditioning in behavioralism is what Pavlov's dog, everyone's heard of by now, which is where something happens. You give people food, you give the dog food, and you ring a bell at the same time, and they begin to associate the bell with food. And then they ring the bell and they begin to salivate and get hungry, even though there's no food. Classical conditioning. Skinner came up with operant conditioning, which just has various choices, basically, that you can choice, like, and they have people think punishment and the way he uses punishment and reinforcement is different, because people think a negative, like a punishment is taking something away. He used positive reinforcement. If you give something that increases, you give something, you add something to the situation, and it's positive if you add something to the situation. Negative if you take something away. It's reinforcement if it makes the behavior more likely, and it is a punishment if it makes the behavior less likely. And so it really has a very technical definition. It doesn't have so much to do with what you might think of as reinforcement or punishment. Example, positive reinforcement. Child cleans their room and gets a cookie, right? So they did what you wanted them to do. You give them a cookie. It makes them more likely to do it again in the future. Positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement. Driver buckles their seatbelt to stop the annoying alert, promoting seatbelt use. You take something away. So you're not wearing your seatbelt. I'm going to go, bam, 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 bam. You go, stop it. You take it away. Then you plug it in. You do the behavior they want. And the thing you wanted, and something is removed. So you're reinforcing that behavior, but it's taking something away. That's negative reinforcement. These are all being used on you all the time. This is what society, if you don't understand B.F. Skinner understands you, right? Positive punishment. A student cheats on a test and gets a failing grade, deterring, you did something, you gave a failing grade. Negative punishment, athlete arrives late to a practice and is benched. So you take away his time to play. So it's negative, and it's a punishment because it discourages that behavior. Very effective. This is very effective. And I will say, as regards to corporal punishment, which is worse? Here's a guy being whipped. It's not a black guy. It's a white guy in Europe. He's being whipped by another white guy, so it's not racist. And here's some pilgrims in stocks. Which is worse, corporal punishment or being locked up in jail? And this is the depends, and the depends is where culture happens. That's the property that gives you wisdom and refinement. I think our society could probably benefit from using a little bit of legal corporal punishment. For example, is it more cruel if someone gets caught dealing drugs, and it's not a huge quantity, to put them in jail for 3 to 5 years, or to spend
30 minutes whipping them in public. I would argue that probably the 30 minutes whipping them in public would be as or more effective a deterrent, because a lot of the men doing that are very, very susceptible to shame and being being humiliated in public, and pain would probably be a huge deterrent. It would probably work. It does work in the Philippines. They do this. They have it absolutely works. And it's probably less cruel because you take away 30 minutes of his life, the scars heal, he learns some humility, and he doesn't have, a permanent record and have 5 years of his life taken away where he couldn't advance in his education, his career, meet a girl, start a family, all this stuff that happens, right? I think that corporal punishment. Go ahead.
How can you build a giant industry and profit around that?
I know. This is where the prison as profit industry people are absolutely correct. However, those same people would be very against corporal punishment because they're often very soft. Lefty people who this is just intrinsically they reject. However, and the thing is, corporal punishment.
Well, hold on. So
Go
this
ahead.
is weird because those soft lefty people would be absolutely against corporal punishment, yes. But then at the same time, in the next breath, they'll make jokes about somebody getting raped and beaten in prison.
That's absolutely true. 100% true. However, I submit to you that many of that is like the people pretending to be the Luftwaffe. It is people putting on a tougher front than they actually are. In a safe way, in a way that it doesn't, no one's really, because people have a desire to not present as a victim and to not feel like a victim. So there are a lot of people put on a tougher front than they are, so that, it's a psychological protection mechanism. Yeah. So I mean, I think that this would, and also here's the thing in the room, the elephant, the reasoning with your child thing, like Stefan Molyneux and Sam Hyde say, that depends on the IQ of the child. This is very.
Yeah, I guess too. Yeah, when they're really young, it's essentially an animal, and you need to keep them from wandering into the street.
Yeah, I think a spanking would be perfectly justified if they keep running into the street, because that is, the potential downfall of that is they get run over. I think it's more problematic of a thing if you're doing it because they stole a cookie, right? But the like a dog, it's the same thing with a dog, right? And Skinner went over this if you separate the punishment or the reward in time too long from the action, the behavior, the subject does not connect the two. So if the rat goes through the maze and he gets the reward an hour later, he doesn't connect the dots. He just, the reward came randomly. The less intelligent the organism is, the more immediate the punishment or the reward has to be. This is why you can't, you yell at a dog because you come home and it destroyed something. It has no idea. The people try to rub their nose in it, and I don't know if that works or not, so they get the message. The dog is moved on. It doesn't, anything that happens now from the dog's perspective is not connected to what it did an hour ago. Just, it has no, and people, some people who have long-term planning skills can connect things very far away. They start planning for retirement, 60 years in the future. A mouse can never do that, and a pigeon can't either. And a lot of people, especially the people that end up in prison, also are less capable of connecting legitimately. You think, you're like, why would they do this? They're going to end up in jail. That doesn't comport. And I know that sounds upset. Most of the people in jail are not very bright. And the idea that what they do now and then the punishment that happens weeks, months later, it doesn't connect in the way that if they were caught selling drugs and they immediately got whipped, would connect. Right? There is wisdom in that approach. that again, I guess what I'm saying is there is no answer here. And the country music dad who resorts to the Bible says smack him around a bit and lay down the law, like, sure, there's a law, but you have to be this guy. You have to be the wise. You can't be mad. You have to handle it very softly in many cases, because the people you're working with are not other adult men. They're women and children, and they don't, they damage a lot more easily. Right. So, yeah. And so the also you can run into problems applying rewards and punishments. For example, there's a well-known effect of people who use a shock collar on their dog to try and prevent its aggression. And then the dog just out of nowhere bites someone. Why? Well, again, the dog is not a human being. It doesn't. So when you, and Skinner described this perfectly, when it growls at someone and starts displaying aggression and you shock it, all it learns is don't display aggression. And so in the dog, the growling is a warning sign, like, I'm about to be aggressive. And what you've done by shocking them when they've growled is tell it, don't display a warning sign, just do it. And so they skip that step and they just go from patient to bite. You're like, what happened? I thought, right, because you've only, all you did was train. You have to be very, like, you got to be careful with it because you can absolutely teach the wrong lesson if you're not being careful. The dog just learns, oh, growling gets me shocked. Biting is a different behavior. Biting's probably still okay, right? The dog doesn't have the same mind that you do, just like the beaver aliens wouldn't. Okay. Unfortunately, there's a tendency towards a lack of nuance on the conservative side. This isn't true in all cases. People say the left doesn't have nuance. You're absolutely right, but the left is kind of stupid, and they don't know they're stupid. You're supposed to be the wise person that understands things. Here's the worst examples of this. And did you ever see Bible Man growing up?
Sounds vaguely familiar.
He was a superhero, like a evangelical superhero.
Oh yeah, I see your picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Bible Man. He fought the Shadow of Doubt and the Fibbler. It was pretty fun. But
yeah, I saw a lot of those like off-brand but Christian versions of things.
Yeah. And there is a value in just having like a clear code, but also that can tend towards a rigorousness that is unhelpful in the real world where people have complex problems. This is very problematic because, as I say here, there's a tendency toward a lack of nuance on the conservative side, which is terrible because the left loves nuance but sucks at it. They in trying to abandon the hard lines, they just recreate it harder but unconsciously. They've recreated everything that they, in trying to fight racism, they've made the most racist things imaginable, just not in a way that they recognize. It actually falls to you to be the wise ones. We've got the wheat and the tares. And a lot of people would say, oh, if he were God, he'd be like, oh yeah, pull up all the tares. This is what a lot of the conservative country music dads were like, there's problems in the world, problems in our family, pull up the problems. But that's not how actually God parents. He's like, well, there are weeds in what I planted. An enemy has put that there. But if I pull those out, the weed's going to come with it. And that's what happens to these children. You've tried to pull up the weeds, the tares, and you've pulled up some part of their psyche as well. And so you have to be very careful and judicious here. Okay. Like I said, this is the thing about the dog. Skinner showed us using discipline is kind of complicated. It's not so easy. Like, here's 3 pictures. Here's a snarling dog, and here's Antifa. Here is a chained up dog, and he's like in the front of like a trailer park, and there's a kid bored in church. Could be school. Here's a diseased dog, and here's a person with blue hair wearing a bunch of weird piercings, and they've just, these are the same pictures, in my opinion. And this is the way that this is the behaviorism that these dogs have been subjected to, leads to these outcomes reliably, just as the behaviorism these people were subjected to leads to these outcomes. Like this is what I said. If you smack a dog when it growls, what does it learn? It learns not to growl. When a child is forced to learn, be it in church or in school or wherever else, what do they actually learn? They don't actually, Skinner would say, they're not actually learning that what you want them to learn is important. They are learning that people do not care about their thoughts and desire. And this is, again, it's a problem because you do have to teach your kids stuff. But, are you teaching them what you think? And it may be as simple as yelling at them. Yelling can be very harmful. Like yelling at a dog can make it very, like if you yell at a dog all the time, how does it react? It gets very fearful. It gets cowardly. It starts, just yelling. Same thing. Our friend Owen Cyclops, he made this years ago. He went on a little tirade about this, Pavlovian conditioning and operant conditioning. Nice little cartoon of it with a dog. Here's the bell and ringing the bell. He goes through the whole negative reinforcement stuff, active avoidance. Good stuff to learn because you'll see how the government and society and corporations use this on you all the time. All the time. They are trying to add reinforcement and punishment to get your behavior to be what it wants it to be. It's very effective. If you don't recognize it, it's even more effective. And so how does this bleed into culture? Because I said nuance is where culture happens, right? You don't get culture from hard lines, really, because art is about understanding. Art is about understanding what you don't understand. It's about grappling with problems you don't quite know how to grapple with. That's where it comes from. This was an article that Scott Greer wrote. Have you heard of Scott Greer? Are you familiar with old Scotty Greer?
The name definitely sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's one of these guys that like he's had some success trying to be an alt news pundit. He's talking about how so many people canceled on the 250th America show, and how people are souring on Trump and so forth. And he had this great little bit about conservative culture, how Trump is not able to pull anyone together to actually make a show. And the Daily Wire is struggling, Ben Shapiro's company. And people say it's because people don't like Jews. That's just what people like. Oh, they're souring on Zionism, and yeah, no, it's actually because they set out to do what conservatives repeatedly for the past decade have said they want, and it turned out no one actually wanted it. Again, no, you don't know what you want,
or they just don't like Ben Shapiro.
Well, yeah, but Ben Shapiro wasn't involved in these things, really. At least he didn't appear on screen.
Oh, isn't he on the Daily Wire, or am I confused?
He's in the Daily Wire, but the Daily Wire started a series of television programs, which no one really heard about because no one watched them because the conservatives were like, "Man, I don't really want to do what I said I'm going to." It's like
were those like the movies and stuff that were like basically other people's stuff but conservative?
Yeah, it was also like this show here at the bottom, the Pendragon Cycle, Rise of Merlin. They did like a whole little. It was high production value of like.
Was it good? Because normally these things are like really.
It wasn't bad. It was a standard fantasy thing. There was non-woke. There was no wokeness in it. It had traditional virtues on display. They had A Wonderful Day with Mabel McClay. She had a non-woke children's program that had puppets and stuff. And they had like a cartoon that was non-woke, like I don't know, it was Mr. Bertram, and they had other stuff as well. And so for 10 years plus, conservatives were saying we have to take culture, we have to make culture, we have to make our own media, and they didn't go for any of it. Even though, I mean, it wasn't I didn't see any. I have to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of it. But I did give it a go out of this, like, well, people have been saying they want this. Let's see if they could the writing have been better? Yes, of course. Could the whatever, right? But is it better just objectively writing and production value wise than a lot of stuff that succeeds? Yes. However, conservatives do not support what they want with their money. There's a big problem. Again, if you like this show, please contribute. Become a citizen, become a patron, become a true fan. There's all different ways. You can do that right now. Link in the description. However, they did this, and the reason Daily Wire is having problems because they spent a lot of money on this stuff, and it did not give a lot of return, right? And I'll go back to that. Oh, yeah. I'll go. No, here we go. There's no salvation from the country. I used to think this too. This was my hope. I think if you listen to early episodes of this show, it was my hope. It didn't work out. Farmers are not based, mostly because they don't exist. They're like this idea that there's like a Mayberry of farmers. All the farmers are Monsanto, except Monsanto got bought and rebranded. Whatever it is now. All the farmers are big factory farmers. There's so few farmers. Rural America is not a bastion of Traddism. The lower classes merely seem to ape the upper classes, which in hindsight was always obvious. Hickman, A.M. Hickman wrote this piece called This Ain't Your Granddad's Rural America, and he talks about how he travels the backwoods of America, and he runs into goth cashiers, pierced eyebrows, rainbow hair, trashy America. This is a picture from the Pride Parade at Watertown, South Dakota. And I just include this because if anyone is under the delusion that conservatism is going to have any hope in the future of like surviving in the rural areas, you are totally out of touch. I've been to Watertown, South Dakota. I don't remember why. I remember being there. South Dakota I love South Dakota, really, because it's this huge place where almost no one is. What's your equivalent of South Dakota in Canada, Cavi? What's the big place that's huge? I mean, a lot of it is that, but like a place that like exists.
Saskatchewan?
Saskatchewan. It's like Saskatchewan in that. Have you ever heard the song "The Last Saskatchewan Pirate"?
No.
Oh, I used to be a farmer. I made a living fine, but the government came and something. Anyway, along the CP line.
Canadian song?
What now?
Is that a Canadian song?
I don't know if it's a Canadian song, but it is
Canadian.
It's about a Canadian event called the Last Saskatchewan Pirate. Saskatchewan. You know that's a hard word to spell. Saskatchewan. Here, I'm just gonna.
But to be fair, in Canada, like everything is pretty much like within an hour of the U.S. border, and anything north of that is just completely empty.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. The Last Saskatchewan Pirate. I got close enough. I used to be a farmer and I made a living fine. I had a little stretch of land along the CP line, but times were by and though I tried, the money wasn't there. The bankers came and took me land and told me fair was fair. I looked for every kind of job. The answer always no. Hire now, they always left. We just let 20 go. I'm singing it fast. The government, they promised me a measly little sum, but I've got too much pride inside to end up just another bum. Then I thought, who gives a damn if all the jobs are gone? I'm going to be a pirate on the river Saskatchewan. That song, you're not familiar? This is a Canadian song.
Not at all.
Because it's a heave, ho, coming down the plains, stealing wheat and barley and all the other grains. You know, come on, Dad. You know this one. This is like what Canadians sing in school, I imagine. Anyway.
No. we sang when I was a kid in school. You do "O Canada" first thing in the morning, and then at the end of the day we did "God Save the Queen." But then a bit into my elementary school career, we stopped doing that because I guess it was religious.
Oh, "God Save the Queen"?
Yep.
Did you still do "O Canada"?
Yeah, we do "O Canada" still first thing in the morning.
I don't know. I hope you want the Queen to be saved. I don't know. She wasn't a great queen. I know people. They've been better queens. Anyway, she was nice. I thought I had to stop a Muslim invasion of the Buckingham Palace once, but it turned out not to be. Another time. Anyway,
it was too late.
It was too late. My point in that is that South Dakota is like Saskatchewan in that like it's this huge piece of land, And in the summer, the grass grows as it does in the world. And the grass grows so high along this flat forested land, unforested land, I should say, no trees in sight. As far as the eye can see, there's not a tree, just grass. And you can drive down for hours, and it feels like you're just driving through a sea of grass that never ends. And anyway, Watertown is
Saskatchewan.
Watertown's about an hour and a half north of Sioux Falls. And this is a picture of the property. And when I was in Sioux Falls, Watertown, I tell you, no joke, I saw more pride flags in that small town. Sioux Falls is the biggest town in South Dakota, and it is not big. Okay, not a big town. Like I said, Watertown has a population of 22,000-ish, right? And Sioux Falls has a population slightly more. Okay, there's not a lot going on in Sioux Falls. The falls are lovely. But the number of pride flags in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, per person is probably the highest per capita in all the land. In all the land. There's no conservative anything in rural America that's bastion of anything. It's not going to happen. I was there, and I landed in the airport, and I needed my rental car place. I got to the desk, and they said, "We don't have a rental car for you." And I said, "I have a reservation." And they said, "I know we had issues. It's not here." And I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Well, there is another enterprise like in Sioux Falls proper." And I said, "Okay." He said, "If you can get there, you can give you one of those cars." I said, "Can you drive me there?" And they said, "No." Because he's like, "I'm the only guy running all of the enterprise in Sioux Falls." And I said, "I can't. There's another car, another lot in the city, but I can give you the key for one of those cars here, but I can't get you there." I said, "Okay." So I looked for an Uber. I don't remember why I didn't get an Uber. I ended up getting a taxi, and the guy that came there was the shortest man I've ever seen who wasn't Guatemalan. And he was not Chechnyan. He spoke many languages and English only sort of. But he told me in the car ride, because he in the taxi ride, which he made me sit in the passenger seat, and he told me his whole life story. And he told me that while he was there, that he was South Dakota's only translator on like the police of South Dakota for like 5 different languages, Russian and Czech and whatever else, and Bulgarian. And he told me about his divorces and whatever. And I said, we got to talking about things, and I was driving around, and I said, "Well, I guess, you like I don't remember how the topic came up, but I said, I guess you moved here because," he was talking about something about religion, because maybe you like traditional values. He's like, "Oh, this is not a place for that." I said, "Really?" He said, "Listen, everyone here gay," in sort of in like a Czech accent. He said, "Everyone." I said, "That can't be." He drove me. He said, "We'll go on detour. We go through town." He's like, "Pride flag. I said, "Everyone here." He said, "All of them." And like it wasn't Russian. I'm sort of doing a Russian accent. It was like a Slovakian language accent. I don't remember. I said, "That's surprising." And he said, "It's like this all over." He said, "Like this all over." I said, "Interesting." Anyway, the point is, will these people vote Republican? Strangely, yes. This transgender person in rural Pennsylvania does seem more likely to vote Republican based on statistics. I don't understand that, but again, other people are not me, and I don't understand what's going on in their head. This gay black man with the eyeshadow in South Dakota, he very well may have voted for Donald Trump. Who knows? My point is, even if they're voting Republican, which they seem to be, they're not. You're not getting, again. You're getting what you didn't ask for. Okay. Here's a paywall. Here's SpongeBob and Patrick. Here's a paywall. Is the dollars and the Great Wall of China. I'm sorry, we've done a lot without paywalls recently, but the paying people need something too. And if you would like to be a good person, you can give money and you will get what's behind the paywall. Cavi, can you tell them how they can do that? How can they be a good moral person?
There's several ways, and they're all conveniently linked pretty much everywhere. In the show notes, on YouTube.
Yeah,
there's description.
There's so many ways that I would recommend personally. I don't know if you'd agree, Cavi. I think the Surgeon General would agree that you should use all of them, not just one method. But
that sounds like the best way to go.
You should give money via all the methods. Don't just give a little bit. You know, there was a televangelist I used to watch when he would come on at 3 a.m. And I don't remember his name, but he would say explicitly, he'd look at the TV and said, I prayed that God would save souls to match your generosity. You send me $100, I'll save 100 souls. And I'm not saying we're going to save any souls, but that same spirit. Mother Angelica, who ran Etwin, the Catholic channel, she used to say with her eye patch and her gravelly voice, dressed as a nun, because she was a nun, she used to say, fit me in between the gas and the electric, meaning that you should pay every month some amount of money that was between your gas bill and your electric bill to her. And I think you should give us even more than that. I believe that is your duty as an American or as a citizen of this world if you're not American. I think that is something you need. As I said, conservatives of any stripe do not support the things they like. And a lot of you have been listening for years and you still don't support it. And then you're like, oh, why didn't I get anything that I want? Me. Why didn't I get it? Why is everything? You know, have you seen, you don't watch movies anymore, Cavi, but He-Man was recently released. Did you see that? The movie He-Man?
Nope. But I know Red Letter Media did a review of it, and I plan to watch that soon.
It wasn't very woke. It had just the tiniest amount of wokeness. It bombed because, and this is one reason, yes, they're pushing an agenda, but also Country Music Dad doesn't watch movies. He doesn't. The people that
doesn't he watch stuff like 24 and whatnot?
What now?
Doesn't Country Music Dad watch?
Yeah, he'll watch like 24 or whatever. He watches Yosemite.
Or Jack Ryan.
He watches Yosemite, which what's his name? Oh, I lost him. Scott Greer talks about. He watches, what he's watching is not anything for values. He doesn't care. He just wants the aesthetics. He will watch Taylor Sheridan's subversive. If you're dressed as a cowboy in the show, that's all they care about. It doesn't matter if you're like,
that was George Bush's trick.
Yeah, you're dressed as a cowboy and then you push everything like, and they keep falling for it. Vivek can get up there and just put on a cowboy hat. They're like, yay! And Shapiro did this too. And so did Justin Trudeau. What a great hero. He's like, how are they going to know to vote for me unless I dress like a Swami? But it works because people are that stupid.
He dressed in every possible costume.
No.
Including blackface so many times that when the media asked him how many times he dressed in blackface, he said, I can't answer that. And when they asked him to round to the nearest 10 times, he was like, I can't answer that.
Look, how are they going to know to vote for me unless I dress like I Dream of Jeannie on a carpet? How are they going to know to vote for me? And people fall for that every time. Every time. And not just conservative, everyone falls for this, by the way. Everybody. It's so you get like, it is impossible to be long in politics and not sort of despise the population because of how easily they're manipulated. Like what was it? The Jonas Brothers, that band of Disney brothers that now does music. One of them hinted for ages that he might be gay, and the gay community threw so much money at them for that. And then later he was like, "Nah, I'm actually straight, but I already got your money." You know, he just. Anyway, if you want to see what comes afterward and how to save the country, give money. Otherwise, you're just a problem.